something to say, there's something to say.
Okay everybody, rhouse21 and I'm back again. So this is the last of the bearing swap portion of the video. So as you see here, you've got Slade, which is my Rustler VXL equivalent. So this process is the same for whether you're a Rustler or a Bandit or a slash two-wheel drive. It's pretty much a common platform, and it's pretty reliable, pretty robust. So in this case, now we're about to do the transmission. So in order to get this guy, this transmission needs to come completely apart. That means the whole 9 yards. So the nice thing about these things is that they were designed so that the whole rear clip will come apart as one unit. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove my my wing assembly here, and I like to try to do my modifications using as many authentic parts as possible. So
what do you mean authentic?
Well, I mean as many like manufacturer's parts. So this modification was done using basically all Traxxas parts. So first thing I'm going to do is remove this spoiler, which is basically mounted to a stock Traxxas wheelie bar. So this little bolt just comes right out. These are secured by three screws of different sizes that just bolt into the transmission case. So I figure that I could spend a lot of time trying to engineer something completely from scratch, or I could just take something that was already engineered and engineered well and just run with it. So, and that's the thing about RCing in general. I mean, it's cool to make custom hop-ups or custom parts, but you know, sometimes you have to just think about, you know, is it
worth it?
Well, is it worth it to try to reinvent the wheel? You know, so in this case,
so you can make it more efficient.
Yes, you could make it more efficient, or you could spend a lot of time trying to make something work like marginally better. So,
but that 1% means so much.
Well, there's sometimes where chasing the 1% makes a lot of sense. There's sometimes where chasing the 1% just means you're just spinning your wheels for no reason. Okay, so it's 1 bolt, 2 bolts, so I'm missing one. I think it's on the other side. Yeah, down in here. So it says stock mount. So I've actually been getting a lot of people asking me, how do I make my own aero kit like Slade has? And all I'll say, because my plan was to make a full video at some point where I just kind of spill the beans and show everybody, you know, how to do it. But well, what I was going to say is that honestly, I've shown all these parts so many times that if you're really interested, all you need to do is just watch these videos and you can probably figure it out. Yeah, I've pretty much said I use all Traxxas parts. There's only so many Traxxas models that have a big old spoiler tin on the back. So, you know, it doesn't take that much homework. But I might go ahead and just show that all at some point. But not today.
You have a lighter. Wait, is this spoiler supposed to look like this, or?
Okay. Mr. Kyle?
Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so now this little screw, because normally this whole thing will just, actually, it does just come apart. Duh. Forgot my own thing.
Yay.
No, actually, no, that doesn't, because I tied it together. Okay, so there we go. This little screw didn't want to come out here. There we go. So now this just slides out as a unit. Ta-da. Okay, so Slade's differential case has been modified slightly, and I've shown this in other videos. Normally it's just a solid hoop that comes through here. This has been modified to allow the castle fan to sit through. This really doesn't weaken it any from a strength standpoint. So I'm just going to leave that right there for the time being. So now we need to worry about just getting the rest of the clip off. So you've got 4 screws here, here, up here, and up here that hold this whole, that hold the shock tower onto the body. And then you've got these 2 bolts on either side here and here that hold the suspension arms in place. So actually let's go ahead and let's start with the shock towers. Kyle, are you okay over there?
A screw fell out of the chair, so I had to screw it back in.
Okay, just don't hurt yourself over there. You sound like you're in pain.
No, it hit my head like multiple times.
That sounds like pain. Okay, and again,
Yeah.
I mentioned this previously. No, I'm good. I'm doing this by hand. These little screw holes have been worked over a few times, so they need a little manual attention. So as I've mentioned previously in this series, Slade started off life as a Rustler RTR that was converted to VXL specs, and that's actually worked out pretty well. But the only thing is that Rustler RTRs, the base models, they have all Phillips screws. The VXLs have all have hex. So I was originally intending to convert Slade over to just to all hex, but I didn't. And some of it is history and and everything, as I mentioned before. But there's another aspect to it too, and I'll just show this for one quick second. If you look at these screws, you see the threading in here. How nice big threads and go in there. Even though they're the same parts, the same plastic parts, these 3mm, they have a much finer threading in there. So the screws from the RTR can actually do a number on the screw holes from the originals. So if you try to convert over to the hex screws, they may fit okay, but they may not, and you might actually lose some of this connection strength just because the screw holes have been chewed up a little bit. So after playing around with it and kind of feeling that I think I tried to change one and it didn't really feel right, so I just decided to just keep it as is. Because I figure that as long as I have a good strong connection, then the actual fastener doesn't really matter, because I don't take this stuff apart very often. Okay, so we need to turn it over. The screw fell down inside of here. I need to shake it out. No Taylor Swift jokes, please.
Take it off, not take it out.
I know. Okay, there it goes. Alright, so screwed out. So now, let's lift this guy up so you can see the motor mounts up here, or should I say the suspension shock tower. That's it. The shock tower is up here, and it's free. So now I need to free it from the bottom, and the way you do that is by, as I have plastic pieces attacking me, there's these 6 screws on the bottom side, so those have to come out. So I'm going to go ahead and set it up like that so you guys can see.
Are you gonna use this?
Just put the fingers over there. Alright, okay, Mr. Kyle, my Phillips bit. Did you see where it went? No, the one that was out, sir.
Not drinking.
Kyle, thank you for trying to be efficient, but you saw I was sitting here working with this stuff.
I
Just because you're done doesn't mean I'm not working.
No, I I'm just trying to keep the work area clean.
You're trying to keep the work area clean by putting away the tools I'm using.
Well, I'm sorry, but all the tools you're using are scattered around. How are you supposed to keep it clean if you're all the tools using just all over?
Anyway, they were lined up, but you kept stealing them.
I stole nothing.
Okay, so like I say, so I got these 6 screws holding the transmission case all together. Alrighty. So, okay. So now just flip it over and I'll set it flat. So now the transmission case is kind of floating free in here. And by being patient and diligent, you can make the whole thing come out as you need.
Patience is key, Daddy. Patience is key.
Says the boy with no patience.
Look what I did. And I do have some patience.
Okay, well, try to exercise some of that patience while I'm filming a video. Okay, so I'm gonna, just to make life a little bit easier, I'll pull these guys off. Actually, no, I'm not gonna do that because they're zip tied on. Let's put that back in place. There we go. All right, so now these were actually held in by friction now by these 4 little clips in there. So I'm just working that out. Okay, so what I just did slightly off frame is I just put some torque right up in here and just lifted this guy right off. Now this is going to be a little bit hairy, so I'm going to pull this out and just give me a little bit of room to work with. So I'm going to do this whole job here without taking the motor off of the ESC. So the easiest thing for me to do is just go ahead and pull this guy off. I'll take off my Mod 1 gear. So I'm going to take off this gear and so you can see. Alright, so there's this little retaining screw that's right here. So I just fish this guy down. There we go. So I need to make sure that you guys can see it. So yeah, there's just the little retaining screw that holds everything in place. Just need to take that like a couple turns and it just slides off. And this is a Mod 1 which has a 5mm hub or 5mm center shaft. So I have to use this Robinson Racing adapter here in order to step it down so I can use it for this application. So I'll just set that aside. So now I can work the 2 bolts here to get the right size. And just pull these off. Yeah, off frame, the boy is sitting here twirling around with my balancer, entertaining himself.
There we go.
Okay, so the motor, as you guys know, is held on with 2 screws. And just because I'm different, and I like to have a little bit of, make things obvious. So I've used these 2 big old studs here to hold the motor in place. And I do that largely because I want to have a nice solid head. Oh, sorry. I like to have a nice solid area where these things hold down into the motor. And I have washers underneath them to make sure that this all the force is evenly distributed so they don't try to have things destroyed by the binding force of the motor. So I think some of you guys have, or those of you who are watching know that the long-term plan is for Slade. This 3600 kV motor here might be going away, and I might be stepping up to 2650. Actually, I'm curious now. Let me go ahead and grab that guy. Grab what guy? This is an aside, but this is my 2650 kV spare motor right here. So I don't know if this will actually fit in the stock motor location. I'm thinking it won't. What do you know? Kind of does, sort of. Okay, now it doesn't really work too well. Okay, so in order to use this, I'll need a new transmission case. So that's not a big deal. There's tons of them out there that will work just fine. But I'm not quite done with the 3600 kV or 3800 kV yet. So that's, again, things for the future. Sorry. Alright, so let's get back to actual working. Okay, so in order to get into here, certain things need to come apart. So now I just need to go ahead and pull off the suspension arms here so that the transmission, pull off the suspension arms and off the yokes on these sides so that I can separate the unit. So this is just held by these two screws here. So again, because Slade is an interesting mix between VXL and RTR parts, I have an interesting mix between hex head screws and Phillips head screws. But, you know, it all works. Okay, so that mounts up. There we go. So now I need to get these yokes in place. There we go. So these yokes are both held on by axle pins, which use a very small bit. I think that's a, let's see. Yeah, it's a, I think it's a 1.5 millimeter hex bit. So, think about the CVDs. Is you have a U-joint on one side and then you have a dog bone on the other end. And they're all metal, so that there's no flex. And it actually works pretty well. The only thing about that though is those particular drive lines, you know, they're kind of pricey. Traxxas makes one, like I said, MIP makes one. There's a lot of good ones out there, but they're going to cost a lot of money. I found it's easier just to get stock strike shafts, which are actually still very strong. And one of the big complaints with these guys is that you can get a little bit of bending, or there's some loss because they have to telescope up and down. I just lubricate inside the slide so that it doesn't really lose much, and they can take a lot of torque without actually bending, so or without without getting like any kind of wraparound effect. So I think these are just fine. You can get replacement sets from Dollar Hobby for very inexpensive for most of the Traxxas models. So I just go on with my day. All right, but back to the transmission. So now we've got this thing open, and as I said, slash LCG, and with the slash two-wheel drive and the Rustler and the Bandit, and I think the Stampede two-wheel drive also still use the same transmission. And you can see here, because this used to be an RTR, it's got the screws. The RTR and the VXL are the same internal construction though, so this is identical, doesn't really matter. So let's go ahead and swap this out, take out the screws. And last time I had this thing apart, I rebuilt it. Basically just lubricate everything with the good grease. So actually, this is why I have tools. Alright. one. Two. I thought this was all the way out. Okay. Three. Just set these guys over here. Four. And looks like I ran down my battery. Okay, here. And we'll use the big dog.
Why can't you say that? We're gonna use the big dog.
Well, you don't have to like it. I'm working. All right. Okay. Now, we're using the larger tools, like this thing. You just have to be very careful because this has a whole lot more torque than your other ones, so it's a lot easier to be overzealous and strip things out.
Overzealous?
Overzealous. Using a little bit too much zeal.
Zeal?
This is why you need to pay attention in vocabulary in English class.
I do pay attention in English class.
You should know these words. These are not too complicated, sophisticated words. Alright. Let's just bring that back in the charger. Alrighty. Okay. So now, so you guys know these are built as a clamshell. So this just comes right off, just like that. So you can see inside of here, there's actually a number of bearings. So here you have one of this idler here. There's another bearing in here which holds this shaft. There's bearings on the other side. So like I said, there's a lot of bearings in here, which is why we have the rest of the bearings in that kit over there. So let's just go ahead and jump in. Alright, so this right here, the idler, this has two. So I will use a screw, take these out. So here's one. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Actually, I think I'll use a socket. If I can get the right size. I'll use the back of this. Just push this right out. There it is. There's two. To add these to my growing collection over here. And I'm not going to bother with the extra grease, as I mentioned before, just because there's tons of grease already in here. Ooh, don't want that to disappear. Alright, perfect. Alright, so that's back here. That's done. So now I'm gonna see if I can pull this guy out here with this. Actually, come on. There we go. Okay. So I got that one. Place that. again. There's a bearing down in here. So just keeping count so far, we had 2 on the idler, 1 over here. We got this guy right here. This is one output shaft. Okay. That goes back on. And now this side of this side is done. So I'm going to set this side over here. Now over on this side, we've got the differential, which you guys saw me rebuild last time. And I have one of these washers on this side of the output shaft. There was another on the other side, which is still attached to this other output bearing. So we go ahead and transfer this guy back on. There it is. I'm just going to set this on the side here. Let's push this one out. Okay, so one more output shaft. And this is not the cleanest job in the world, because you just, like I said, I've greased this guy before, so there's a lot of this grease just in here. But this grease is serving a purpose, so I'm not too concerned with it. Okay. So now I have this idler. So this got a washer right here, which is doing a great job of sticking to my hand. There's a retainer in there. Go ahead and push that guy out. See, he doesn't want to come out. Okay, that might be fused into place. So I might need to take off the slipper clutch assembly here to get that guy. So 1 second, let me grab my handy dandy tool. Okay, so I'm just going to pull off the slipper clutch. And to do this, I hold down this bolt here so it just doesn't twist. Okay, so that comes apart. This comes off. And it's always a good idea to have some kind of system just to help you keep all this stuff straight. So you put your things in an organized way so that you can put them back together appropriately. Okay, so that comes off here. This comes off here. Push this retainer out. Like that. Now I should be able to just push this guy off, just like that. So now this is apart. So there's one more bearing up in there that we'll get to in just a minute. Let's go ahead and finish this guy. So I'm taking out this other here. So there is a okay, so there's no bearing here. So I didn't have to take that apart. Okay. Alright, but no, actually I did, because I have to get this guy. Just go ahead and push this out. Comes out of here with the collection. Add this boy in. Okay, so now this, I already got my washer in place, I didn't take it off. So that goes back on here, like so. Back on this side. Put in this retainer. There. So there is one more bearing in this kit, which I'm going to assume is intended for the slipper clutch. So, just for the sake of completeness, you know, we know what this goes here, but I think, well, if you follow the channel, you know that I've upgraded Slade to a, upgraded Dizzy to an E-Revo spec slipper. Still the same gear, 30 E-Revo Slayer size. So I might as well just go ahead and do that here too. I've got the parts. So I've got this kit from Dollar Hobby. Now, honestly, this is kind of a moot point for the slipper clutch because for my power application, I'm torquing the slipper clutch down all the way. So it really shouldn't matter because this slipper clutch shouldn't move. However, everything's apart, so I might as well do it. Well, first, let me check to make sure this will work because this is a bigger, beefier piece. And nope, won't work. Not enough clearance on the back. So we're staying with the stock one. So I guess I have a spare in case I ever blow out Dizzies. Alright, but back to this. So, okay, sorry, this is the wrong one again. This is the E-Revo. That goes back in the case. Over here, we've got Slades. So, again, just need to pull this guy off. So use this, pop it right out. Put this with the collection. Now, trying to be careful not to actually touch the pads on my slippery hands here, because I don't need grease on my friction surfaces. But like I said, I'm going to torque this guy back down all the way anyway. So this slipper's shouldn't be doing any slipping. Okay, so got there, and I've got the actual clutch assembly there. I'll put these two things together here. Feed this back onto the shaft. Make sure that it locks in, which it has. Great. And now put the rest of the assemblies back on. So I have my spring and a little washer to help take some of the spring force. This back down. Now again, for my application, I'm torquing this guy down all the way, but common suggestion is for a standard application, you torque it all the way down and then you back it off about a quarter turn. That should give you enough torque for average running. Since Slade's going in the speed run application, I don't want any slip, so it's going to be all the way down. That's it, that's all in. So now let's go, we get to put it all back together.